It started with silence, deep, vast, and unnatural silence that clawed into the soul like a cold wind in a dark room. The kind of silence that didn't just come from the absence of noise, but from the absence of something that should be screaming. The observation deck of the Etheringway station, known as the Echo Spire, hovered between two shifting nebulae and rotated on its silent axis. It was built by the Alari, the galaxy's oldest peacekeeping race, to watch, warn, and witness. For centuries, the Spire had seen the birth of stars and the fall of empires. Its sentinels, light-based beings called the Luminari, had chronicled every major galactic event for 1,000 years. But now, every recording light had dimmed. Every starlit sensor showed nothing. The universe was holding its breath. Syr-ven, the youngest Luminari on deck, drifted through the prison corridor, her glow trembling slightly, a flickering pulse of unease. She wasn't supposed to feel fear. Her kind had evolved beyond it, or so they believed. But something ancient stirred. In her core, the protocols were clear. Observe, record, do not interfere. That was the first rule of the universe. Especially regarding the humans. Especially them. The forbidden ones. The unpredictable anomaly that tore through patterns, laws, and carefully balanced systems. The last species to be placed under cosmic quarantine. Yet somewhere beyond protocol. And law, Syr-ven had made a mistake, a tiny one. A glance through a forbidden gate, a breach of a microsecond. A spark in the dark. She had seen them. One human. A single man standing in the ruins of a fallen shuttle, blood trailing from his side, eyes squinting into the ash-heavy wind of an unregistered moon. He had no weapons, no tools, no contact with his kind. Yet he sang. Off-key, cracked by pain, but he sang. Syr-ven hadn't known what music was, not truly. Not like this. That sound carved its way into her being like molten ice, confusing, overwhelming, impossible. And in that one moment, she didn't just observe him. She felt him. The breach had triggered something. First came the silence. Then the failing systems, then the voices. Distorted, foreign, crying through the interstellar relays. Don't let them die. Don't let the light fade again. She didn't know whose voices they were. Not human, not Alari, not anything documented. But the message was always the same. They are the last fire. Don't let them burn out. Now she hovered in front of the Council array, light trembling violently as the other Luminari materialized one by one, their bodies symphonies of shifting colors. The eldest among them, Veltar, pulsed with the deep blues of disapproval. You looked into the rift, Syr-ven. You saw them. I didn't mean to, she answered, voice fracturing like crystal under heat. But I saw him. And now I can still hear him. You violated the first rule. I know. But I think something's wrong. Not with me. With them. Something is happening to them. They are chaos incarnate. If they perish, the universe corrects. No. Her glow dimmed, not in shame, but defiance. He was singing, bleeding and dying, but singing. That is not chaos. That is hope. The council shimmered, ripples of uncertainty breaking their symmetry. Even Veltar paused. It was not like a Luminari to defy the council. And yet, here she stood young, fragile, flickering with truth in her light not far below them. The moon where the human had fallen pulsed red on the map. A warning beacon had just activated, a scream in data form. Emergency signal, human distress, unacknowledged by any known fleet. The man was still alive. I request breach clearance, Syr-ven said. I request contact. Denied, Veltar. Echoed with finality. You would risk the entire balance for one unstable creature? Yes, she whispered. Because he didn't stop singing. As she turned and departed the chamber, light flaring with forbidden's purpose, the council remained in fractured silence. In their ancient hearts, older than light, they too remembered a time when songs had saved civilizations, not destroyed them. Syr-ven didn't look back. She moved toward the Forbidden's Bay, the gateway to the outer verge, to the human moon. Alarms began the moment she initiated override. Sirens wailed like ghosts. But in her mind, the human's voice rose louder, raw, human, brave. And in that moment, across the stars, something ancient stirred. A law was broken. A story began. A world held its breath. Asterisk, asterisk, the wind tasted like iron and rot, scraping through his teeth and into his throat as he struggled to sit upright. Each breath was an argument with gravity, each movement an insult to broken ribs and torn muscle. The crash had not been kind. Neither had the weather on this godless moon. The sky had no stars, only swirls of dust and clouds like bruises stitched. Across the firmament, Lieutenant Jack Morrow blinked through the blur of blood at the corner of his eye. Vision narrowed to a fading circle as his suit tried and failed to regulate oxygen. The last diagnostic ping had confirmed his worst suspicion. No rescue, no comms, no backup. His crew was gone, burned. He'd buried what was left. 3 shallow graves beneath shards of twisted alloy. He wasn't supposed to be the survivor. He'd always been the stubborn one, the one who cracked jokes on suicide missions, who offered coffee to exhausted pilots and gave away rations to rookies when they broke down. He wasn't the strongest or the smartest or the fastest. But he endured. He listened. And now, with a fractured femur, a shredded side, and lungs full of poison air, he was still here. Barely dot he could have screamed, should have. But instead, he sang. He didn't know why. It wasn't beautiful. Just a broken whisper of a folk tune his mother used to hum during storms back home. Something about holding fast when the wind raged, about the sea loving the brave. It made no sense here. There were no seas. No ships, no home. But he sang anyway, because silence was the worst enemy of all. Silence meant giving up. Silence meant forgetting who you were dot, so when the sky cracked open, literally tore like paper, and light poured through in sharp ribbons of gold, he thought maybe death had finally come for him in a way he could understand. But it wasn't death. It wasn't a hallucination either, because something floated down through the rift. Something alive. Something glowing. She looked like a living flame wrapped in crystal, a dancing humanoid shape of light and shimmer. For a full second, Jack thought he'd lost his damn mind. He blinked hard. Still there. Not a hallucination. Not death. Not madness. And alien. He coughed blood onto the rocks, laughing as he leaned his head back and stared at her. Well, shit. You're real, aren't you? The creature didn't speak, not with a voice. But Jack felt something brush the edge of his mind, like a warm breeze laced with sadness, concern, empathy. And that's when he realized it wasn't just here to watch. You came for me? He whispered, stunned out. The alien pulsed softly, light dimming in what felt like uncertainty or shame. Jack chuckled weakly. Took your time, but I'll take the company. He coughed again, hard this time, and the alien shimmered in alarm, rushing forward like a falling star. She didn't touch him, not quite, but her light hovered close, scanning, learning. She sent waves of emotion he couldn't fully translate, but he could feel the questions in them. Why are you still alive? Why do you keep singing? Why are you not afraid of me? Jack swallowed thickly. Because fear's wasted energy. Because my crew is dead and I'm all that's left. Because if I stop singing, I remember the screams. A long pause. A ripple of sorrow from the being. Then, to his complete shock, she made a sound, not a word. A note, soft, high, fragile. And then another. She tried to mimic him. She was trying to understand music. God, he whispered, you're learning. She didn't just want to study him. She felt, she cared. And when her light wrapped around him, not touching but warming the air, something. And Jack broke not from pain, but from relief. For the first time since the crash, he wasn't alone. Hey, he muttered, almost delirious now. If you're gonna kill me, just make it quick. If you're not, then stay. Please, just stay. And she did. Syr-ven had broken the rules. But watching him cough and smile and sing despite everything, despite blood and bones and 100 kinds of failure, she knew this was no chaos. This was resilience. No file or directive could have prepared her for the gravity of one dying human's will to keep living dot, so she answered him. Not with words, but with light, a glowing circle above his body that bent the broken wind and wormed. The dying ground. Her own form dimmed to match his heartbeat, weak as it was. She would not leave. She could not dot and far above them. In the invisible lattice of cosmic observatories and forbidden archives, red warnings began to light up one by one. The Luminari had touched the humans, and the humans had touched them back. The days on that moon bled into one another, time uncoiling like a slow fever, marked only by the ache in Jack's ribs and the soft rhythms of the alien light that never left his side. Syr-ven hovered close, always watching, always learning. She had long abandoned the silent posture of her kind. Now, she responded glows of pale lavender when he groaned in pain, ripples of amber when he drifted to sleep, and every so often, a hesitant echo of song. Jack didn't know how he was still alive. The moon's atmosphere was hostile, the wreckage. Useless, and his body failing one organ at a time. Yet he endured 1 hour to the next, carried on by spite and curiosity, and the surreal comfort of his strange companion. She didn't speak, not in the way he was used to, but her presence was like a language made of weather. He learned to read her moods and her flickers. She learned his limits in the quiet. He told her stories. At first, he thought he was rambling. into empty space, the fever eating his coherence, but she always stayed, and listened. Sometimes she would project images, not onto screens or through tech, but directly into the air with light and shape. A memory of hers, perhaps, a towering crystalline city, a sea of stars above a bridge that had no edges, and once an image of her homeworld, if that's what it was, made entirely of spirals and beams, like someone had sculpted a sunrise from glass. Beautiful, Jack whispered, half breathless from another coughing fit, but cold. All that light and no warmth. Yours seems like a lonely kind of paradise. She dimmed then, slowly, sorrowfully, as if she knew. He didn't pry. Instead, he told her about Earth, not the wars or the politics or the madness. He told her about music festivals under the rain, about his sister who ran a bakery in New Orleans, about the first time he held someone's hand during a meteor shower and thought maybe love wasn't just a word. He told her about old dogs and bad coffee and how his dad used to say pain made people honest. And every time his voice broke, her light pulsed gently around him, like a distant campfire that refused to go out, once when the fever hit hardest. And he fell into unconsciousness. She reached out, truly reached, her energy weaving through the broken air, into the circuits of the shattered medpack. And for a moment, technology bent to empathy. The medpack flickered, restarted, and administered a weak but effective stabilizer, enough to buy him another day. Maybe 2 when he woke, the air smelled less like metal, and she was curled beside him, her form smaller now, mimicking the shape of a sitting human. Why? He croaked, confused. She shimmered an image into the air, a child not human, not her own kind either, but something in between curled in her arms. Then the child faded, flickering away like stardust in a solar wind. Jack felt the ache of her. Silence. You lost someone. A deep, resonant wave of blue surrounded them. She didn't confirm it with words, but she didn't need to. He knew that feeling too well. He'd carried dog tags heavier than planets. Held the last breaths of comrades who whispered names they never got to say again. I'm sorry, he said. I think we all carry ghosts. She didn't move, but the wind around them stilled, as if the moon itself had paused to listen. That night, or what passed for night, he asked her a question. If you knew the rules said not to help me, ... why did you come? Her light blinked once, then twice. She projected an image, him, bloodied, standing amid the crash site, singing. His voice cracked, body trembling, but alive. That, he said, that stupid song. She glowed gently. You heard that and thought, yeah, this one's worth saving. He smiled, weakly. You've got terrible taste, you know. But she only glowed warmer, and this time, he swore he could feel it, not just heat, but emotion. A response. A bond. And in that bond, a miracle unfolded, not healing, not rescue, but something rarer, understanding. 2 broken souls, stranded in the nowhere between, saw in each other the ache of loss and the fire of survival. Neither spoke the same language, neither came from the same stars. But they knew grief, they knew love, they knew what it meant to be the last spark in the dark. Somewhere above them, beyond all rules and councils, the universe watched. And for the first time in a long while, it did not interfere. It listened. *****. The silence broke 2 days later, not with a sound, but with a shift. A tremble in the ground beneath Jack's battered form. A soft but unnatural vibration that hummed through the rocks like something ancient stirring in its sleep. Syr-ven flared suddenly, her light sharpening into jagged white edges. No longer gentle or curious, but poised, defensive, alert. Jack saw it immediately. Her calm was gone. She drifted slightly above the ground, pulses of unreadable signals flashing in tight patterns from her form. Something was wrong. Not wrong like a broken bone or poisoned air, but wrong like a door. Left unlocked on the battlefield. What is it? Jack rasped, propping himself against a rusted alloy strut. Pain blooming like fire under his skin. She projected nothing this time. No images, no answers, only a single color, deep crimson. It meant danger. The same way her blue meant grief, or her amber meant wonder. But this red, he hadn't seen this red before. Then the air shifted again. Not wind, not weather, a distortion. A presence. Jack turned his head slowly, too slowly, and saw a shape crest the ridge tall, insectoid with skin like obsidian carved by lightning. It wasn't a creature built for beauty or peace. It was built for survival, predatory, measured, silent. It moved on 4 thin legs, armored and glistening, with no visible eyes, but it looked at him just the same. Then it hissed, not a sound, but a vibration that crackled in his ears and made his vision shudder. Syr-ven stepped between them instantly, light coalescing into a sphere that pulsed outward like a shield. The thing didn't retreat. It didn't rush either. It just waited. What the hell is that? Jack asked, coughing, but Syr-ven didn't answer. She hovered lower, pulsing waves of information into the earth, as if searching for something buried beneath them. Then the truth came, one image, not from her, but from the ground itself. It wasn't a moon. It was a vault. An ancient prison world, built by the early species of the universe, Alari, Lemonari, and others long extinct. A cold tomb sealed with gravitational keys and layered distortions, meant to hold the aberrant, the twisted ones. Not evil, not exactly, but broken, bent by time and entropy, mutated through the long forgetting of the stars. Sentience that had fallen into madness during the last collapse of cosmic order. Syr-ve and had known the system. Was red-zoned, forbidden, but the gravity readings had changed. The seals were fading. And when she found the human here alive, singing, she hadn't known the prison's locks were failing. Jack absorbed the horror slowly. You're telling me I crashed into an alien hellhole? Syr-ven responded with a fractured pulse of green and gray. Not exactly. More like, the prison cracked the moment you arrived. Jack stared at the insectoid thing, which still hadn't moved. Did I wake it? The pause from her said more than any word could. And then she showed him more flashes of memory, records long buried. The first rule wasn't just about fear of humanity's violence. It wasn't just bureaucracy or xenophobia. It was because once a human had entered an ancient tomb like this before centuries ago. They weren't supposed to. The vaults were hidden for a reason. But the human had touched something that felt something dormant, and it woke up, not because it hated, not because it wanted to destroy, but because the human made it feel again. The human didn't survive, but neither did the seal, and so a new law was etched into every database from the Orion Alliance to the Nephilim archives. Do not touch the humans. They awaken what should sleep. They connect when nothing else can, and sometimes they break things. Just by caring. Jack felt the words burn into him like prophecy. He looked at Syr-ven, who now pulsed with fear. Not for herself, for him. She had broken the law. And now he understood why it had been written. What happens now? He asked quietly. The creature below the ridge took a single step forward. The ground splintered beneath it. Its limbs shifted and twisted like it was remembering how to be. It wasn't charging. It was studying him. Does it know me? Jack whispered. Syr-ven glowed briefly. Not you. The human spark. The unbearable light of memory. The possibility of feeling again. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It never had been. It was about what humans made the universe remember, and that memory was waking things that had chosen to forget. The air had thickened with tension so dense it felt like breathing through sand. Jack could feel it even through the dull pain of his injuries, the gravity bending ever so slightly, like the world was holding its breath again. The aberrant had stopped moving, not retreating, not advancing. It waited. It watched. And in its stillness, Jack understood something deeper than logic, something raw and ancient. It knew him, not by name, not by face, but by species, by song, by the ache in his bones and the fire in his heart. Humanity, that wild, impossible flame, had been written into the fabric of this prison long ago. And now it recognized that old echo in him. Syr-ven floated closer, her light dimmer than before, flickering with guilt and dread. She was trying to hide it from him, but her pulses were too erratic. Her people weren't built for secrets, not like humans were. Jack reached out with a shaky hand, letting his fingers brush the edge of her energy field. It tingled, soft like mist, but there was sorrow in it. She showed him the full truth, now not filtered through glimpses or half-formed projections, but everything. This moon hadn't cracked by accident. His ship hadn't just crashed. A beacon buried in the crust, forgotten by time, had activated. When it detected his DNA signature, it called to his vessel, drew it in with gravity distortion cloaked as a navigational error. A trap, or maybe a test, and Syr-ven, despite the rules, had already known part of this. She hadn't come to save him. She'd come to see if the prophecy was true. The Luminari believed in balance and containment, but there had always been a splintered faction within them, quiet rebels, who whispered that the real danger wasn't humanity, it was what the universe didn't do because of fear. Jack looked up at her, his face pale, lips cracked. So I'm the key, he said hoarsely. That thing down there, it won't leave until I do something. Syr-ven pulsed in pale confirmation. The aberrant is drawn to the pain, to the human echo of memory. But it's not hatred, it's longing. If it touches you, it may awaken fully, or it may destroy you, or itself. We don't know. Jack coughed, blood running from his nose. Why me? Her answer came not in words, but in light so soft it ached. Because you were still singing, a sound, a small one, carried on the wind like dry leaves scraping across stone. More movement on the ridge. Another aberrant smaller, slithering behind the first, then a third. The vault wasn't just waking one, it was calling them all. And Jack, weak as he was, could feel them inside his chest like distant thunder. He had a choice now. He could run if running was even possible. There was a ship buried deep in the Luminary records, one hidden near the magnetic pools, placed there centuries ago in case of containment breach. Syr-ven had access. She could guide him. She could get him home, but if he left, the aberrants would follow, not just him, but his echo. The signal they now felt because of him, they would seek that light again. And if they found Earth, he didn't need to see the images. He knew what would happen. Jack turned to her, voice raw but steady. You've seen the inside of me. You know what I'll choose? Her glow rippled, low and mournful. Yes, that I need to go to them, not run, not hide, meet them. Syr-ven pulsed in alarm, then urgency. You don't understand. Their minds fracture stars. They are not evil, but they are not whole. Touch could mean unmaking. You might die. Jack gave a crooked smile. I've been dying since the crash. The only thing keeping me alive is you, and maybe the sun. He pulled himself up, one agonizing inch at a time, his legs barely holding weight. He looked toward the ridge, toward the gathering horrors, and felt no hate. Just a strange, calm ache. They're not monsters, he whispered. They're broken, like us. Syr-ven floated before him, blocking the way, her light a frantic pattern now. You are not responsible for what was buried. Let the vault seal again. We can leave this place. He shook his head. They'll find someone else, another ship, another singer. Maybe a child next time, and they'll still be alone. Then, for the first time, he did something no protocol, no rule, no law had ever allowed. He touched her, not with gloves. Not with tech. With his hand, flushed a light, a human hand pressing gently into alien radiance, and Syr-ven changed. Her form pulsed violently, flickering through color spectrums never recorded. But instead of retreating, she steadied herself. He had broken her too, but not with damage. With connection. With choice. You don't have to come, he said, quietly, but she followed anyway. Together, they walked into the pit, toward the aberrants, toward the unmaking, toward the only thing that might save them all, a human willing to feel. **, the descent. Into the basin felt like stepping into a heartbeat, not one that pulsed with blood, but with memory. The kind of pulse that echoed through time instead of veins, through grief instead of muscle. Jack could barely walk, each step a scream in his joints, each breath a gamble with pain. Syr-ven flanked him silently, her form no longer floating. Lightly but hovering closer to the ground, low and concentrated, her radiant skin wrapped tightly around her essence like armor spun from sorrow. Together, they crossed the threshold where light from the sunless sky dimmed entirely, where shadows were not cast by objects, but by intentions long buried. The aberrants waited at the edge of the chasm. Not 3 now, dozens, maybe more. Some stood upright, skeletal and spined. Others slithered like smoke made solid. They were not uniform. They were not natural. They looked like the nightmares of the galaxy that had forgotten how to grieve. Shapes born from eons of silence and abandonment. But they didn't attack. They didn't rush. They watched. Jack stood at the center of their gaze, feeling their weight press against his chest, not physically but emotionally, like being dragged through every bad memory at once. He could hear them, not in words, but in sensations. Cold, joy, distant agony, regret warped by time. They weren't evil. They were lost, broken things clinging to echoes. And the loudest echo among them now was him. They're waiting for something, Jack whispered, swaying on his feet. Syr-ven extended a tendril of light to steady him. Her pulses were erratic now. They want to feel what you feel. They want to know what was stolen from them when they were sealed. They want to remember how to be alive. Jack stared at the massive horror before him, and for a moment, just a flicker, he saw something beneath the terror. He saw a childlike need, a hunger not for destruction but for contact, for connection, and he understood. These were not monsters. These were souls that had once screamed too loud for anyone to listen. I can't save them, he said, his voice hollow and honest. I'm not a god. I'm not a soldier anymore. I'm not even whole. Syr-ven's light touched his temple, gentle, You are enough. They don't want gods. They want truth, and so he sang not the same song as before. This one was older, ragged. From a part of his life buried beneath years of duty and grief, a lullaby his mother used to hum after his father died. He didn't remember all the words, so he whispered what he could, voice cracking, breath short. But the melody rose, shaky but alive, into the dark chasm where nothing had sung in centuries. The aberrants moved out slowly, carefully, like beasts not sure whether to flee or weep. One stepped forward, the first one, the tall insectoid thing that had watched him from the ridge. It drew near enough that Jack could see its body in full detail, fractured metal fused with bone, glowing veins of light long faded to ash. And in its chest, where a heart might have once beat, was a hollow space, empty. Stirlc stot. It reached out a claw, not as a weapon, but as a mirror, and Jack, mad with pain and certainty, stepped forward. Syr-ven screamed his name, not in sound, but in radiant blue, an urgent wave of please no, but Jack reached anyway. He placed his hand against the aberrant's claw, skin to husk, breath to silence. For one instant, the entire basin shuddered. A burst of light exploded between them, too bright to see, too vast to hold. Syr-ven was thrown back, shielded by her own energy field, and every aberrant staggered, wailing without sound. The mountain behind them cracked. The sky itself bent. Then silence. Jack collapsed. The aberrant was gone. Not dead, changed. It's monstrous. Form no longer flickered with fractured energy. It pulsed, slowly, like a living being. Its chest, still a void, now held a dim glow. Not bright, not whole, but warming, as if a seed had been planted there. Then another aberrant came forward, and another. Syr-ven rushed to Jack, scanning his body, her pulses a storm of panic. He was alive, barely. His vitals were chaos, his mind distant, like a candle about to go out, that his hand still twitched. His lips moved. One more song, he mumbled. She held him close, cradling him as best she could with energy and sorrow. And she sang for him, using the tone she had learned, imperfect and raw. Her light flickered with the tune of his lullaby. Around them, the aberrants listened, and in the stillness, something began to change. In the prison built to contain pain, humanity had offered something else, permission to feel again, and that was the most dangerous thing of all. Asterisk, asterisk. The sky above the vault began to clear, not in a way that followed physics or atmosphere, but like grief releasing its hold after centuries of being clenched too tight. The roiling clouds split open just enough to let starlight through, the first real light this world had seen in eons. It touched the ground softly, like forgiveness. The basin that had once been a pit of agony now pulsed with a new energy, raw and uncertain but alive. And in its center lay Jack Morrow, unconscious, pale but breathing. Beside him, Syr-ven hovered protectively, her form trembling with the strain of keeping him alive. Around them, the aberrants had changed. Where once they had been grotesque reflections of broken memory, now they knelt, folded, bent in reverence, not to worship, but to listen. Jack's final song had etched itself into them, into their circuitry, their marrow, their ghost souls. They didn't understand words, but they understood longing. And through him, they remembered they once had names, homes, dreams. Syr-ven sang now, softly, continuously, weaving notes from Jack's memories with frequencies no human ear could hear. She did it not for ceremony, but to keep his pulse steady, to remind him that he was not alone, that even if his breath faltered, his impact would not. Every note she sent out resonated through the pit and into the aberrants like light through cracked glass, painful, healing, uncontrollable. She thought he might die in her arms, but Jack didn't die. He woke. A small sound. A cough first, then a groan as his eyes fluttered open. The stars blurred above him. His chest ached like it had collapsed and been rebuilt from the inside out. He saw her first Syr-ven, glowing softer than before, or real, like she'd traded some of her essence for something closer to humanity. She looked tired, if light could look tired, but her glow pulsed with joy when she saw him stir. I'm still here. Jack whispered. Yes, her light answered, brightening. You are. He turned his head with effort, seeing the aberrants gathered silently around them, no longer twisted beasts, but remnants of tragedy trying to remember how to be something else. His voice cracked. Did we stop them? Syr-ven touched his mind gently. You changed them. That is stronger than stopping. A long silence passed between them. Not empty, full, heavy. Jack felt the weight of it all press against his ribs, the cost, the beauty, the impossibility of what had happened. A broken man with nothing left had taught forgotten gods how to feel again. He hadn't destroyed them. He hadn't saved them either. He'd seen them, and in turn, they had chosen not to become monsters. Then, Syr-ven showed him something, an image formed in the air between them. Earth. Not a perfect image, not a satellite scan, but a dream of Earth, a projection from his mind shaped through her lens. Oceans glittering with light, cities glowing like constellations, people laughing and shouting in 1,000 languages. And above it all, music raw, human, defiant. Syr-ven was offering him a choice now. Return. He could go home. The luminary vessel had been summoned, waiting beyond the upper atmosphere. The council would not punish her anymore. The first rule had been broken, yes, but in doing so, it had revealed a truth too powerful to ignore. Humans were not a threat to the universe. They were its reminder. The reminder that feeling, even when it hurts, even when it scars, is the only path forward. Jack stared at the image of Earth, tears prickling behind his eyes. He could almost hear his sister's laugh, smell the coffee she brewed too strong, feel the rain on his face. But then he looked back at the aberrants. Some of them still shivered with unfamiliar emotion. Others had curled into fetal forms, as if they were waiting for dreams to find them again. I can't leave them, Jack said softly. Syr-ven's light flickered pain, understanding. Devotion. Then neither will I. So they stayed, not as prisoners, but as guardians. Together, Jack and Syr-ven turned the forgotten vault into something new, a place of healing, a haven where broken minds could relearn emotion, memory, even hope. With time, the aberrants began to hum their own songs, crude and strange, but honest. The first sound of a species returning to itself. And across the stars, in the highest councils and coldest archives, the story began to spread. The one about the rule they should never have written. The one about the human who didn't save the universe with power or war, but by sitting beside monsters and feeling with them. No one remembered his rank. His records were buried, redacted. But across distant stations and dying planets, they whispered his name like a hymn, the man who sang in the dark, and the light that loved him.